Hey y'all, this is episode number 16. Going to be talking about government schooling today and all the problems with that. Thank you once again to Flavor Aid for creating the intro music you are about to listen to. Check out their new EP, All My Life, which is available on Spotify and all streaming platforms. Really great EP. Can't say enough good things about it. So make sure to check that out and give it a listen. And I hope you enjoy the episode. What's up, y'all? This is the Sovereign Individual Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Guerra. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you giving this a listen. If you're enjoying what you're hearing so far and liking the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the show so that we can keep growing, keep reaching out, keep finding new people, and go ahead and share it as well if you know some folks who might be interested in these topics and this whole idea of liberty and all that fun stuff. And we're doing well. Up to, I think, over 75 followers on Twitter now, so no longer 69, which is slightly a bummer, but now the next goal will be 6,969 followers. So that's the next goal we're reaching for as far as followers on Twitter go. Because if you couldn't tell already, I am a very mature person and not at all a jokester or somebody that would laugh at something that is immature or inappropriate in any way. So we're going to be talking today about government schools, what that looks like, why it's an issue, why specifically at this particular moment I'm bringing it up, and kind of what a liberty-minded solution to the problem might be. So a lot to digest here. I know this is not going to be the first and only time that we talk about this. This will be a subject that comes up a lot because there's a lot to dive into. Obviously, this is going to be more focused on like kindergarten through 12th grade type schooling as opposed to college level, because there's a whole lot more that goes into that as well. And I'm sure we'll have time to address that more thoroughly and get into it a little bit more. So let's talk about government schooling. I like to refer to it as government schooling because public education is a misnomer and it's deceptive and it's misleading. There in no way, shape, or form is the government concerned with educating children, your children, in any way, shape, or form. They are concerned with schooling children and putting them into government schooling where they can be indoctrinated is probably the best word for it as far as what it is that goes on within the quote-unquote public education system. First and foremost, it's an archaic system based on factory work. The school system and what government schools do is based on preparing children to be factory workers. So there's not really a surprise when this type of system doesn't encourage independent thinking, creative thinking, outside the box thinking. They don't want that. The government doesn't want that. They don't want you being individualistic. They want you to follow the rules and stay within a set amount of boundaries and to do what's expected of you and to show up at this place and to be there for that set amount of time and then to leave. They're preparing you to be a taxpayer. That's what they look at you as. You are a paycheck, and they're preparing you to do so. They're preparing you to go into the workforce and work a 9-to-5 job and to pay your taxes and to, like I said before on the previous episode, to become a debt slave. They're jamming down your throat from the time you're in, almost kindergarten, I believe. I can't remember exactly at what point they really started shoving the college thing down your throat, but for as long as I can remember, as far as my government schooling went, they were telling you that you had to go to college, you had to go to college, you had to go to college. So again, that's what the system is based off of, and it hasn't changed. And there's no inclination that it's going to change at all. And what incentive is there for the government to change it? Again, like I said, they don't want to breed creativity and individualism. Those are the types of people that don't toe the line and that challenge the government. And that's not what the state wants. The state wants disciples. The state wants sheep that will listen and obey and not question what it is that the state is doing. And the best way to stamp that out is from the youngest age, stifling creativity and individualism and making them perform within a set standard for a specific amount of time, and this is what's expected of you, and what's expected of you is what's expected of every single other child. You're not any different than all these other children. You are exactly the same, and what we're expecting of you is going to be exactly the same, and we're not going to change what we do or try to teach you based on what you find interesting or how you may best learn, because you're not an individual. You're part of the collective, and we are trying to educate you in order to be a good citizen for the state. And part of it too, I mean, along those same lines of it not changing, you've got administrators who are running the show here, bureaucrats that are dictating policy within the education system. They're dictating this Common Core crap, which is absolutely insane. I cannot believe there is I've heard nightmare stories about it. Obviously, I don't have any children, so I don't have experience with it firsthand. But I've heard these nightmare stories about Common Core and how awful it is, especially the math. And then I saw on Twitter the other day a video of a teacher teaching Common Core math to some students. And she was teaching them how to do 350 times 12. And they whoever posted it put a side-by-side video of them solving it like the way we were all taught to. You put 350 on top of 12, and you multiply the 2 by every number, and you bring that down, then you multiply the 1, you do the carrying if you have to, yada, yada, yada. And then you add them all up together to get the answer, and you get 420. When you're a little bit older, you realize you go, hey, I could take 12, okay, 10 times 35 is 350, 2 times 35 is 70, add those together, you get 420. So you learn shortcuts a little bit later on as you get a little bit older and different ways to do math. But the way, the Common Core, so she breaks it up, she's like 35 is 30 plus 5, and then 12 is 10 plus 2, and then does like a box, like a Punnett square, basically. And it's like 10 times 30 is 300, like making it in way more steps, way more difficult. Like, it's no wonder these kids can't figure out any of this math. If this is how you're having them do it, again, Common Core instituted by bureaucrats and administrators as part of some standardized learning. Because again, these aren't individual children we're dealing with. This is just a collective, and they all need to be educated in the exact same way and meet the exact same standards. It's absolutely insane. I could not believe. Watching that video, I was just, thankfully, this is not an argument between my girlfriend and I in any way, shape, or form. Luckily, like I said, I went to government school growing up, and luckily, I think I was part of maybe one of the last generations where there was at least some semblance of trying to actually educate children instead of just indoctrinating them. I was also really lucky. I went to a brand new high school, so a bunch of top-notch teachers wanted to go there and wanted to be a part of it. So I had some really good teachers as well. But luckily, my girlfriend went to private school, and so there's no argument whatsoever the fact that we're not sending our children to government school. So thankfully, that's not something I plan on having to do. But yeah, this whole idea of just standardize everything. I mean, I remember that going through it, the standardized testing, going through government school, and it just, even back then, I was like, this just doesn't, I mean, the teachers get all worked up about it. Like, think about that. You have, like any other profession, there's bad teachers, there's great teachers, there's good teachers, and the majority of them are just going to be, they show up, they do what they're supposed to. They're not necessarily great, and they're not necessarily bad. They're just kind of there, which is the vast majority of people in almost every profession. And so, but think about it, even the great ones are limited by these standardized tests, because so much of what the money that the school's going to get is based upon that, and there's all these metrics that they have to, or thresholds that they have to meet when it comes to standardized testing, and the kids feel this pressure. The kids are, luckily for me, I've never been one to ever care about tests, so I never felt any stress taking any test, because I just never really cared that much. It was never something that stressed me out. But you hear these stories about how stressed out these kids are when it comes to standardized testing, and how worried they are. And I have no doubt that that's trickling down from the anxiety that is being felt by the teachers, because so much of their job is dependent upon these standardized tests and how their children do on them. And this is not, again, this isn't education. This is schooling. This is indoctrination. This is garnering a very specific result in the type of human that you want to create out of a system like this. And it's awful that this is what we're subjecting the vast majority of American children to. Stifling their creativity. Making them act as if they're just part of this collective and not individualistic at all. And it's awful. And again, this isn't 100%. This is exactly what it is. Like I said, there's great teachers out there, and there's teachers that are able to, even dealing with all this standardized nonsense, are able to reach kids and teach them and make them feel individualistic as well. But the vast majority aren't, because again, they're just there to show up, they're there to do their job, and they're there to get paid, and so they're not going to rock the boat, and they're just going to do what they're supposed to do. There's a really interesting quote by a gentleman by the name of Albert Shanker. He was the head of the American Federation of Teachers back in the 60s, I believe. Maybe it was the 70s. I'm not quite sure when exactly that was. But the quote goes, "When school children start paying union dues, that's when I'll start representing the interests of school children." Now, to be fair, he was the head of essentially the teachers union, basically. So that's not necessarily a surprising thing to hear from him. That it would be so candid might be a little bit surprising, but that just encapsulates kind of what this whole system is about. It's not about the children. It's not about them as individuals and teaching them that they're individuals. It's about making them into people that will go to work, obey orders, not question the state, and pay their taxes. That is exactly what the education quote-unquote system is in the United States. And that's exactly the results that it seeks to produce. So where did this exactly come from? Where am I talking about it at the moment? Well, we'll talk about that encapsulates kind of the feeling of it. This encapsulates this story right here. How much the state does not care about your children. They don't care. The state does not care. Again, this is schooling. They're not there. They're not beholden to educate your children and to foster creativity and individuality. That's not what they're there for. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And that's creating paychecks. Creating people who are going to go out and pay taxes and not question anything. So just an example of how little the state cares about your children. So this was in Gary, Indiana. An 11-year-old son with autism was given an award for most annoying male by his special education teacher. This is his own teacher, his special ed teacher, who is very aware of his condition, that he has autism, and he's, on the range of autism where he doesn't talk much. This tends to be not, nonverbal and can be emotional at times. Now, thankfully, it was saying in the article, the parents were saying he didn't really comprehend exactly what the award was being given for. He was more just excited to have this like shiny trophy to take home. So luckily, it doesn't seem to have done any damage in that regard. It seemed to kind of be lost on him exactly what it was for. But like, are you serious? You read something like that, and your knee jerk is like, I can't believe that. And then immediately I'm like, actually, no, I can. Because the state doesn't care about your children. And for a lot of people, again, who just want to show up and do their job, not only are they just going to do what they're told, that type of thinking infects and starts to influence the way in which they think and they act on it. So then they start to not care about your children either. They start to just see them as part of this collective, as a number, as a statistic, as something as a score that they need them to get to. Their scores walking around. Their dollar signs. If you reach this score, we get this amount of money. Something like that happening isn't surprising at all. And what's also not surprising at all is so many of the problems that come along with that. There's a very famous meme that goes around, and it's a picture of a Google image. It's a picture of a Google search. Because you know how when you search Google, it'll bring you those top results. And so the search is school makes me. And these are, from top to bottom, the most common search results, and the things that are being searched the most, from top to bottom. School makes me depressed, suicidal, anxious, cry, feel stupid, sick, so tired, sad, tired, so stressed. Now, granted, I mean, it looks legitimate. It legitimately just looks like a picture somebody took of their computer screen. But those kind of things can be fake. So let's search it right now. School makes me tired, angry, sad, happy, depressed, feel tired, cry, want to cry. Those are the top results from Google. Searching it right now, I just typed it in. So we're forcing these children to go here every day, whether or not they want to. We're teaching them that might is right. You have to go there no matter what. You don't have individual freedom or choice in the matter. And then we're forcing them to be in this place that's causing anxiety and stress that they're probably feeding off of from the teachers themselves, who are experiencing anxiety and stress. Because again, this whole system is not about education anymore. I don't know that it ever was. It's about schooling. And those who care about education are hampered by these bureaucrats and these administrative hacks who are coming up with these standardized Common Core idiocracy standards that every single child is supposed to meet, because all these children are exactly the same. There's no differences among them. All of them need to go to college, even though that's not the best thing, and not every child should be going to college, and that's okay. And then we wonder why we're facing the situations that we are. So, what's the solution, Eric? Mr. Libertarian, Mr. Liberty Guy. What's your solution? Get government out of schooling is my solution. Disband the Department of Education. One of my favorite memes that came out when, Betsy DeVos, or however you say her name, there's something that she did that people were mad about and losing their minds. And there's that meme of the black guy, pointing to his forehead. And it said, can't be mad about who Trump puts in charge of the Department of Education if there is no Department of Education. And it's so true. But again, get the government out of schooling. Goes back to, who do you trust? Who do you trust with teaching your children, with educating your children, with setting them up for the future? I mean, let's talk about how far the U.S. has fallen in comparison to the rest of the world. How far our students have fallen. How far behind. How we're ranked like 30-something in a lot of categories. I haven't even checked the statistics, but we're getting killed. And if you're trying to tell me that's not a direct result of the government being involved in education, I don't know what reality you're living in. Because the solution certainly isn't more money. We just need to throw more money at the government, and then they'll be able to fix education. That is not it. This isn't, again, we're talking about the government, the state, an entity that is $22 trillion in debt right now. And you expect me to trust them with educating my child? One of the things that is occurring right now that people are making fun of millennials for is that millennials are taking life classes on how to perform basic functions like cooking and paying bills, balancing the checkbook, taxes. Things that they should have been learning in school that's supposed to prepare them for life. This is not a failure of millennials who are too concerned with avocado toast to know how to balance a checkbook, or how to do their taxes, or how to cook, or how to sew. These are things that used to be taught. Now, don't get me wrong. There's been a shift of focus onto STEM type stuff, and there's absolutely, you're trying to prepare children for the best that they can be. But we're not preparing them for anything. Because even shifting the focus to STEM, we're still falling behind the rest of the world in those categories. So what are we doing here? What is going on? And I'll tell you exactly what's going on. It's functioning exactly as a government program functions. Awfully. It's what the government is really good at, is failing. And then demanding more money as if that's the reason that they can't get it together. No. It's we just need more money. We just need to steal more of your money, and then our education system is going to be good. You've shown me nothing that makes me believe that giving you more money is going to help anything. All right, Mr. Eric, then take the government out of it. What does that look like? Well, that's both a blessing and a curse of being a libertarian, of being an anarcho-capitalist, of being a liberty-minded person, of being somebody who's anti-government and wants to get the government out of all these types of things. The beauty and the downside of it. The beauty is it's the same thing. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. That's both a great part of this and a bad part of it. The bad part being it's kind of hard to describe, and it's kind of hard to make an argument when people are like, well, what's that going to look like? And your response is, well, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. A lot of people are just like, well, well, then you just complain just to complain. You don't know. It could be worse. It could be, but I doubt it. I doubt it, because it wouldn't be the government. But no, so you think about it with something like this. Legitimately, I don't know exactly what that would look like for so many different reasons. One, the biggest, technology. If you had told somebody in 1980 that, like, hey, one of the best things to combat drunk driving is that in about 30 years, you're going to be carrying around a microcomputer in your pocket that is your phone, and you're going to be able to just order a car to come pick you up, and it's going to cost very little amount of money. It's going to be really cost effective. Like, imagine trying to explain that to somebody in the 80s. They'd think you're out of your damn mind. You'd be like, what are you talking about? Somebody carrying around a computer in their pocket? Do you see how big those things are? That's not possible. It's the same thing now. We got technology. Maybe it's going to be predominantly online schooling, where, you know, you're having Skype sessions or whatever or Skyping into virtual classrooms with, you know, some of the top renowned professors or teachers at whatever grade level you are, and maybe you subsidize that with going into an office environment and learning there, or you know, trade schools and apprenticeships. You're subsidizing that kind of stuff with. You know, we're teaching kind of the general, you know, history and math and all those kind of things, and then getting them out into the real world and getting them that kind of experience as well. I mean, 80% of the United States has internet access. That number is only going to continue to go up. And this isn't some crazy thing like, oh, Eric's just talking about crazy. Like, we're close to we're approaching the singularity in technology as it is anyway. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what it will look like, because we can't even fathom a system like this when we're not even willing to try. And we can't fathom how amazing that could look if we're just going to be stuck in this rut of what government schooling has been for decades, and look and how little it's gotten us. And the biggest thing too is it would be more hands-on influence from the parents. You take the power out of the hands of bureaucrats and administrators and put it back into the hands of parents and school boards and teachers and advisors. The people that care about your children, and that care about educating them and want to educate them and want to see them do good. Let's get that power back to them, instead of some bureaucrats that don't live where you live deciding what your children needs to know, and that your child needs to know exactly what every other child needs to know and needs to perform exactly the same on this exact same test without any sort of variance, because they're all the same. Technology is going to offer us so much in the way of liberty and freedom and the ability to do things that we've been programmed to believe, like, oh, well, that's what the government's for. And we don't question, why is the government involved in this? And then you do start to question it. People think you're crazy, because how could you ever think that could be solved without the government? But it's happening now. You got the Khan Academy that offers free college level courses from, like, world-renowned academics. You got the ability to access almost any book that's ever been written. You've got the ability to teach yourself how to code, basically. There's YouTube videos galore. You know, there's all kinds of courses that are like, you could pay like $5 to get a crash course into it, and then you could just, you know, there's all sorts of GitHub and open source coding, where you can just look at the code and read it and learn from it. But we're stuck in this archaic version of education, teaching kids to prepare to be factory workers. That's where we're at, and that's what we're going to stick with, and we think we can improve by throwing more money at it. No, we need to scrap it. We need to bring education into being education and into this century. So that's going to be it for this episode. Again, like I said, I'm sure this is a topic that's going to come up a lot. I know there's a couple people on my list of folks that I want to have come onto the show to talk about, that are education background people that I want to chat with about this kind of stuff. So, if you're sitting there listening to this and this sounds, fairy tale-esque or whatnot, and you feel like I could be getting challenged on a lot of these ideas, well, that's going to be the hope, is bringing somebody on who doesn't see this way, and then we can challenge each other and talk about these kind of things, and what challenges may come of what I'm suggesting that I may not be seeing because I'm not involved in the education system. So again, that's the kind of stuff that I want to have happen, the kind of discourse that I want to have happen, and we're going to get those going here pretty soon. I'm working on pretty much got the software figured out to be able to run multiple mics at once. Still learning, figuring this kind of stuff out. So, and then it'll just be a matter of finding the right time for the first interview. So, thanks again for listening. I'm going to get another episode out. If not tonight, then I'll record one on Thursday, and it's just going to be a potpourri episode. There's a few different things that I want to talk about, none of which are like specific to a philosophy type thing or a deep enough philosophy thing to dedicate a whole episode to. So I'm just going to have 3 or 4 things that I want to talk about. But thanks again for listening. You are a sovereign individual, and right now in America we have government schooling and not education. So let's do what we can to change that. Thanks, y'all.